Today we're talking about a common crime in Arizona. It's called resisting arrest. Police really like to charge this when there's any minor hiccup in the arrest process. So if somebody's under arrest and there's passive resistance, meaning they're not cooperating with the police fully, or if it's a little bit more aggressive, if somebody's actually physically fighting back against the police will add a resisting arrest charge. So they may be conducting an arrest for some other reason, and then when a person resists the arrest, they'll add on an additional charge for it. So what does the law say? So first of all, the statute is 132508. If you want to put that into Google, you're going to see language that looks like this. I have the different parts of the statute in different colors so that we can break it down and review each section individually. So let's dive into it. So first and foremost, the law says that a person must intentionally prevent or attempt to prevent the arrest. Intentionally means that a person is making a conscious decision to engage in some sort of conduct. So we're talking about a person's mental state. Are they intending to do this or not? It's more than an accident. So this is not just kind of a misunderstanding. A person is intentionally engaging in some sort of conduct. That's the first part of the statute. If it's not intentional, then this statute wouldn't apply. So a person has to intentionally prevent or attempt to prevent the arrest. The next part of the statute in green here is saying that the person who's under arrest reasonably knows that the person who's conducting the arrest is a peace officer or a police officer, a peace officer who's acting within the confines of their authority. So this is a peace officer who's operating under the color of law. They're operating under their legal authority to conduct that arrest. And this part of the statute is important because this person has to reasonably know that that is a peace officer. If this person believes that that person's not a peace officer, or this is just some random stranger who's tackling them and they have no legal authority to conduct an arrest, then this statute wouldn't apply. A person has to reasonably know. It has to be reasonable that this person knows that this is a peace officer. So, a uniformed officer, somebody who is telling a person, giving them lawful commands, that would indicate that that person should reasonably know. It's reasonable for that person to know that that is a peace officer. And so finally, once we have these two sections established, the law then will go into other specific conduct that is prohibited under the law. So the first part of it says that a person who is actually being arrested uses or threatens to use physical force against the peace officer. So this is somebody who's actually physically engaging in conduct or threatening to engage in some sort of conduct. So they're throwing punches, they're throwing a chair, they're doing something that is actually forceful against the arrest. So there's some sort of physical conduct that's happening. That's subsection 1, so that conduct is prohibited. The next conduct that's prohibited is that a person does something to create a substantial risk of causing injury to the peace officer or somebody else who's involved in the arrest. So if they're not necessarily engaging in that physical force, but they're doing something reckless, if they're engaging in some sort of kind of reckless conduct that is going to create a substantial risk of harm against that peace officer, that also will satisfy the conduct part of it. So again, up here we have the mental state. You intentionally or you reasonably know you satisfy these elements, and then this is the conduct. So somebody uses or threatens to use actual physical force, or somebody creates a substantial risk of causing injury. Finally, this is probably the most common. The person engages in what's called passive resistance. So passive resistance is defined as a nonviolent physical act, or it's a failure to act that's intended to impede, hinder, delay the arrest. So passive resistance, this is probably the most common way that we see this charged. Somebody's just not cooperating. So an officer saying, give me your hands, they're laying on the ground, they're curled up in a ball, they're not cooperating, they're not following an officer's command. So they're not actually engaging in threatening or using physical force or creating a substantial risk of injury. They're just using something that's nonviolent. They're just not cooperating, they're not sitting down, they're not putting their hands behind their back, they're kind of jerking up a little bit so that the officer can't actually maneuver them to conduct the arrest or to put them in handcuffs. It's called passive resistance. It's by far the most common way that we see it. a very good defense to that is that people just tend to naturally react. If an officer's or anybody is grabbing you and maneuvering you and manipulating your body, people have a tendency to clench up and protect themselves. They want to curl into a ball, protect their abdomen. They think that they're being attacked. It's just kind of an instinctual thing that happens. And so passive resistance is really a gray area. It's really, this happens very often. People just don't know how to react. A lot of people have never been arrested before. They've never engaged in that sort of physical connection with another individual. People get scared when a police officer is all over them and actually conducting an arrest. So it is something that is very common, and it's a good defense to say that this wasn't actual passive resistance. This was just something that was a natural reaction. A person it was instinctual. They weren't actually trying to do anything. They weren't intentionally doing anything that would impede or hinder or delay the arrest. They were just reacting. It was just an involuntary reaction. And so it wasn't really intentional. The body was just responding to the stimuli. And so these two subsections here, these are class 6 felonies. So if there is actual use of force or threatening to use force, or there's a substantial risk of injury, these are class 6 felonies. So these go over to Superior Court. You're being charged with a felony if you're going to be charged under subsections 1 or 2. Under subsection 3, the passive resistance, this is a misdemeanor. It's a class 1 misdemeanor. So this is a lower level offense. It's not going to be in a superior court. You'll see this often out of city courts like the city of Scottsdale or the city of Mesa. When somebody's being arrested, the officers will say, well, they weren't cooperating fully. They were hindering the arrest. They'll tack it on to almost everything, and that person will now be charged with resisting arrest. So they'll kind of add insult to injury. They'll add an additional charge onto whatever the original underlying charge was for the arrest. And so this is a serious charge, class 1 misdemeanor. It's the highest classification of misdemeanors that we have. It's the same classification as a DUI. Of course, anything that's a felony is a serious charge. We're talking about going through superior court. We're talking about losing your right to vote. We're talking about potential prison time, depending on your priors. But there is a lot of argument to be made. As you can see here, there's a lot of gray area. So was the conduct intentional? Did the person know that this was a police officer? Did they know that this was a peace officer? Or was this just some situation where a random stranger felt like they were tackling them, or a person didn't understand what the officer was saying? They didn't understand that they were acting under the color of law with any legal authority, or a person was just passively resisting because they've never been in a situation like this before. They've never been arrested, and so their body was just instinctually reacting and responding to the contact. And so there's a lot of ways that we can defend against these. If you've been charged with resisting arrest, it is something to take seriously. Our office, we offer free case evaluations, and so if you're facing this charge, you want to come in, sit down, speak with us. We'll be happy to make sure that we can review your facts specifically, give you a good plan to move forward so that you're not convicted of this charge. Give us a call. We look forward to speaking with you. Thanks for watching.